Today we're going to talk with Zach Lemaster, who is an optometrist turned Airforce Captain and then real estate guru. He runs a company called Rent to Retirement, and they're in 8 different states, and they do thousands of doors as Turnkey Investments. Check it out. All right, I'm here with Zach Lemaster. Super excited to talk to you, Zach. You've had an interesting journey, and I know we've got some overlap to talk about. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, Chad, thanks so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Cool. So why don't we start out maybe with the 90-second overview of kind of your journey and how you ended up in real estate, because kind of like mine, you've had a meandering path a bit and a very interesting story. So I'd like you to share it with us if you would.
My wife and I have a background in healthcare, nothing to do with real estate. We're both optometrists by education. I went into the Air Force and was a captain in the Air Force for 7 years practicing optometry after school. And that's where I started investing in real estate. The first house I bought using a VA loan with no money down was a house hack. So I lived in half as a duplex and rented out the other half. I got the bug. We started investing every single year. One thing I tell people is that every single year, and this is about 15 years ago at this point, we've personally bought more and more real estate every single year that eventually allowed us to replace, our high income as professionals working in the healthcare setting just through investing in real estate, and really diversified across multiple locations where we were specific, Chad, in identifying, the right locations to invest, not just investing in our own backyard. We had a lot of friends and family and colleagues that were interested to learn about what we were doing, and they wanted to invest with us after they saw our success. And so, that was really the foundation of the turnkey company we run today, which is Rent to Retirement, where we assist investors in building their own personal rental portfolio, where we handle everything from leasing and managing, rehabbing, or building the rentals for them, so they can be somewhat of a passive investor. And so, and that was about 10 years ago that we started. So fast forward to today, we're doing about 1,000 doors a year across 8 different markets, mainly the Midwest and the Southeast.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot to pack in 90 seconds. One of the things I think that's pretty interesting there is, one, you had transitions like from normal W-2 jobs that you're doing with your wife into real estate, but then also that you guys have been very active as like doing your own investments, which some people do as high income earners. But then you've also worked like in the syndication type realm where you work with other investors, correct?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, we don't do kind of not like your space. We're never raising capital for individuals. Usually if we have investors that are interested in that, we'll send them to people like you that want to participate in larger projects. Typically, we're helping individuals like buy their own rental properties and then manage them for them, so they're building their own portfolio. But yeah, we've had experience. We're obviously very passionate about real estate and building our own portfolio. That's allowed us to have success that we've accomplished, and we're passionate about sharing that and helping others accomplish the same goals.
Cool. And then for your own investments, I think you mentioned that you own either medical building or hospital.
Yeah, well, a lot of what we buy at this point in time, and this has been a long journey as well, because we started out buying single family and small multifamily, and then we started to invest, in other locations and building teams in other locations throughout the U.S. where we saw the best, opportunity, not just focusing on our local market, which really allowed us to scale a portfolio. But over time, what we started to do is, build equity in the single family, small multifamily, and then trade up. As many successful investors do, they build equity and then they trade up. And so really what we've done at this point is traded up and done 1031s into a lot of commercial, retail, and medical buildings. So we have 13 different centers. These are multi-tenant centers, mainly in the retail space, and then we have some medical tenants as well. We have some optometry clinics. We have a hospital as one of those tenants as well. And so we've really traded up, but we're still every single year buying more and more real estate. And really a lot of that is from a tax perspective. We do a lot of like the cost segregation, accelerated depreciation on the assets that we're buying now. So that's kind of been the trajectory of our own personal investing.
Gotcha. And so one of your tenants is a hospital?
Correct. Yeah,
Sounds like a
it's an
large
urgent
tenant.
clinic. It's not one of your large like state hospitals. It is an
Okay.
urgent clinic. And then we have a lot of the medical prep. We have a couple dentists. We have veterinarian. We have some optometry clinics, some physical therapy and chiropractor. So some people refer to this as like medtail. But this is some practitioners. Usually they're pretty good tenants for the most part. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I actually my first real estate investment was a medical building, and you'll probably find it to be an interesting story. So my grandpa was a general physician. He founded Northridge Hospital, which here in LA is a really large hospital. Founded that in 1952, and then he built his own building in 1954, like a 10-unit medical building. And then my dad is an ophthalmologist, still practicing today. And he bought that building from my grandpa in 1986. And then I bought it from my dad in 2015. So
It's
it's
a
a
family
building.
heirloom at this point,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you
It
can't
was
sell it.
built in 1952, and by the time I got it, it was still all original, right? And I guess my dad was too busy doing eye surgery. It actually has a surgery center, like ambulatory surgery center, in the building as well. And so maybe my dad was too busy doing eye surgery and ophthalmology work to work on the building. So he did normal maintenance stuff, but it was all original. And so when I bought it in 2015, like I had to fix it up. I'm a general contractor by background, a structural engineer. So like one of the first things I did was fix up the building. But that's actually the only property that I manage. Most of my properties I do all third party management, but I still own and manage that one. My dad is one of the tenants. But yeah, kind of similar to you, we got a pharmacist, we got a chiropractor, a dentist, another general physician, and I guess medical massage, like definitely different types of businesses there. Um, but it's interesting. It's totally different than multifamily or self storage. Really different than self storage. But it's been great. And I've got one. You're not gonna believe this. I got one tenant, the dentist, who's been in the same unit since 1965. Still
Well,
practicing.
clearly, you're doing something right with it. You probably need to increase your rents. I'm sure your father's getting a sweetheart deal on that one, but that's very cool that you've gone through the renovation and kept it in the family. And I mean, that's the thing, right? Those buildings, as long as you can reset the depreciation on them, and as long as they're leased out and producing good cash flow, it's like why would you liquidate it? But that's fantastic. You
Yeah.
get to see it from both sides, right? You get to see the medical side and kind of the practitioner side, and then also the real estate side. So I love it.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Love the property, and it is like a family heirloom, right? Like that's the one property I'm not going to get rid of. Most of our deals are generally on 5-year terms, cycles, but sometimes I do have some that we keep longer. But this one is definitely something I'm not going to get rid of. So yeah, to do the big investment into there was great. But yeah, it's crazy. I've had, what is it, 30, 57 years, 58 years that one dentist has been in there, and his unit has not been remodeled. Um, but yeah, I mean, his rent is on the lower side, but he's in an original unit, so it's like, it's, yeah, I can't justify having him pay a lot more. My dad does get a good deal, but he pays rent, but he's not getting the increases like the other tenants are, and he helps me with some of the historical type questions I have that come up with the building all the time. So it's been
Well, that's
fun.
good to
It's been
hear. Yeah, that would be a hard eviction process to go through if you had to kick your dad out, I imagine, at dinner.
No, 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 no. He's great. He's great. So actually, he also has an optical shop in there also. So yeah, pretty diversified tenant base. Very different than the other type of assets that I work with. But I love it. I love it. So you guys, going back to your story with your wife. So are you guys still practicing, optometrist? Or are you out of that now?
No, I mean, we practice on a volunteer basis, like my license. I mean, we do a lot of humanitarian mission trips, internationally. And I mean, we still, it's interesting because as we transitioned, in fact, just recently we had a class reunion we went back to, and it's always an interesting conversation to have with people that are still practicing. And a lot of them say like, "Oh, I'm glad you found, your passion, or that you were, optometry wasn't the right fit for you." And it's always like, no, that was never the case. I love helping people see, and we still do that. It's just that, real estate investing and doing this type of stuff, had a higher ceiling, right? It had no ceiling. And it just allowed us. I'm also passionate about that and helping people accomplish their financial goals. So we still practice on a volunteer basis with some of that stuff, but not as not as an income source.
Gotcha. And the same for your wife?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. She's
okay.
Yeah. We have two small ones at home. We have a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. So it's also like, that's her full-time job right now. It's busy times. So.
Wow. Yeah. That is busy. I'm a few years ahead of you. I've got 5 kids. But my oldest is 1.5 years, and yeah, it's a handful for sure. So it is exciting. It is exciting.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I wanted to maybe dive a little bit more into rent to retirement, because it's something that you guys have definitely scaled. And my understanding is you're one of the largest, if not the largest, provider in this space in the country. Some of my background, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I actually had an exit from my last business that we scaled pretty well. We had about 75 employees and 3 different warehouse locations here in LA, doing lighting. And so I exited that business in 2018. So maybe I could dive into the story on you a little bit, on how you guys started Rent to Retirement. What was the impetus to get you started, and how did you guys actually scale it as well as you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, as you know, it's always a fluctuating journey with ebbs and flows in any business that you're starting cold like this. But for us, I mean, we didn't come into real estate investing thinking that we were going to be in the turnkey business. It just kind of evolved over a period of time with our own investing. And so, as I was mentioning previously, we had really at some point in time, we were investing. I was stationed in the Air Force in North Dakota. We had purchased the first few rentals. I mean, in North Dakota, which is not like the go-to place to try to, have these home run deals, but we did well. In fact, some of the first deals I did was wholesaling farms, which was kind of interesting, but, we started to invest in different locations, Chad, where we saw a better opportunity. That was stepping outside of our comfort zone, where it's like, okay, well, we see these areas, these up and coming areas of population, economic growth, being in the path of progress. And so we started to invest in different locations and build our teams in those locations, everything from property management to the right lenders to use in those locations, contractors and builders and insurance agents and all the above, attorneys and accountants in those areas. So we really started to build our company or our own investing strategically in different locations, and that really expedited our success. Now, it didn't happen overnight, but I mean, it was a long, arduous journey, but it did allow us to make good investments and scale our own portfolio to the point where, we were starting to earn into the mid 6 figures of like net cash flow, which allowed us to retire early. And then we're like, hey, this is great. But we had a lot of people. It's like, what's next? And we were in our 30s when this happened, but we had a lot of people that approached us about like, hey, I want to invest with you. I see what you're doing. Like, I don't have the time or the energy or the knowledge. Can we just can you help us? And so we started to operate in the turnkey space before we even knew really what turnkey was. And we already had the teams and systems in place to just like do more of what we were already doing for ourselves. We don't want to own every single property we come across in all these locations, but instead of passing on them, we can follow the same process and help our investors acquire them and be somewhat passive and just tap into our networks and our teams that are already there. And so one thing led to another, and we just started to grow year after year. And then like, hey, there's actually like a demand for this opportunity outside of our friends and family and colleagues. And so we started to grow our business and scale it and just do more of what we were doing and add team members and then actually do marketing and, like, hey, make this a legitimate business and opportunity. And so one thing has led to another, and we've had good growth year after year. I would say this last year is the only year that we're probably about even, which is okay, because interest rates where they're at and everything like that. But yeah, it's kind of been the evolution, and I think this next year and some of the new markets that we're opening up. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit if you'd like, but we're mainly in the Midwest and Southeast, and a lot of the Sun Belt markets. There's huge population growth and a lot of opportunity. So I think this next year will be, we'll probably break the 1,500 mark for some of the new construction projects that were coming to completion that we started over the past couple of years.
Wow. Yeah, I love it. So you guys actually started it just from doing yourself, servicing your own portfolio, figuring out all the vendors and whatnot that you had to work with, and then eventually provided that service to other people that wanted to kind of go along the same path, but probably more hands off, right? They're probably a lot more hands off than you were in the early days, right?
Yeah, and we made a lot of mistakes. We lost a lot of money. Too, right? This wasn't overnight success. This was a lot of grind and stress and challenges. And, sometimes to find a good contractor or property manager, you got to go through 20 bad ones, as you well know. And that takes time and money and energy. And so the idea is that people can easily tap into the network that we've already built and the good people out there to try to expedite their success and avoid some of the pitfalls that we've had to. But
got it. So what does it look like? So if an investor is interested in this, what are the steps? What happens? How does it start? How do you decide what market to put them in? What's their involvement from a customer standpoint?
Yeah, we want to spend a lot of time with individual investors to learn what their goals and criteria are. Turnkey makes sense for a variety of different people. There's individuals that have never bought real estate ever, or maybe they own a primary residence and this is their first investment property. They need a lot of hand holding just to learn investing, learn about financing and evaluating deals. There's some people that this is maybe they have a portfolio locally, or this is their first time investing out of state. We have many medical professionals. That's like a core of our clientele, basically just because of my background, where it's like, hey, they're high income earners. They don't want anything to do with real estate. They want financial benefits and they want to own real estate, but be hands off. And then we have, high level people that are, real estate professionals out there running huge businesses, and they're just buying stuff to easily diversify and tap into a new market where they get some tax benefits, right? We have a lot of these guys that they're like, hey, I need to come in and just buy 20 houses and run accelerated depreciation on them because I earn too much money in my flipping business or whatever it is. So we cater to a lot of clientele, but a lot of it, I would say the majority is the newer investor or the new investor out of state. So we walk them through the whole journey of, we want to first schedule a consultation with them to learn what their investment goals and criteria are, evaluate their financial situation, look at different lending options, and then try to match them with the right market and properties and asset classes that are conducive to their goals, with the idea of that, over time, the idea is to diversify across different markets and asset classes that you can easily do investing through this type of approach. And then make sure they're set up with a comprehensive approach of, all right, do you need an LLC? And if you do, what is the multiple different structures you can use? Do you have a right accountant that knows how to file out-of-state tax returns and things like that, and making sure that they have the right lending opportunities. So we just walk the person through the journey and then ultimately identify the right investments for them, and they purchase them. We don't charge clients anything. We make our money through like builders would, or rehabbers, building or rehabbing the properties and then selling them. But we want to add as much education and value to anyone that comes into our network that wants to learn how to diversify their portfolio.
Got it. And are you guys doing ground up or rehabs or stabilized deals or all of them? What does the portfolio look like, or the offerings?
At this point in time, we're about 50-50 build to rent. And I do think that's one thing that makes us very unique in the turnkey space, is that, and we're very much as much builders as we are, contractors and rehabbers. So we have a strong build to rent presence right now, mainly in the Sun Belt. So this is areas like Texas, Alabama, South Carolina, and mainly Florida. Florida is our top market that we're very active in. These are areas where you have things like landlord-friendly legislation, lower taxes. The rent numbers make sense. Our average house that we build in Florida is a four bedroom, 2-bath, $300,000 house that is going to rent for $2,700 a month. For new construction, that's pretty dang good.
Hmm.
And that house has immediate equity. It's probably appraising at 350. It's going to produce a double-digit cash on cash return, even at 7% interest rates. So that's kind of the average products that we're looking at.
Got it. Cool. So maybe shifting gears a little bit into the markets. I know you're in several different states. How do you guys decide what type of markets you're going into, and what are you looking for, and how might that be shifting over time?
Yeah, as you well know, Chad, the markets are always dynamic and always evolving, and so you need to keep a pulse on like where the opportunity is. Generally speaking, and this has just evolved from our own criteria that we've built over the years, at least for us. I mean, I'm a true believer that you can be successful in any market, but at least what we look for, any market with the right strategy, that is, but at least the markets that we look for, we want to be in areas that have landlord-friendly legislation, so we're not having to battle eviction, especially on the residential side, like not having to battle evictions for a year, that you hear about in some of these markets, that you can charge back things to tenants, that you have control in a lot of cases. You don't have rent control, like some of the states we're seeing starting to implement. We want to have landlord-friendly legislation, low taxes, future population, and economic growth. We want to have a diversity of industries, so we don't want an area that's just solely reliant on, say, oil or gas or something like this. We look at the rent to price ratios, and so we want to be obviously in areas that you can obtain positive cash flow, but also have some level of appreciation, because it's a growth market. So we like to be in the path of progress. We also like to be in areas where you have just general affordability, because I think that these are more accessible. Like the average purchase price could be between 200 to 250 for most of our markets, which makes it a lot more accessible. It's not your $500 million 3-bedroom, 2-bath, like some of the markets where you just can't cash flow unless you're putting 50% down. So we want to make sure that people can cash flow in these areas, but also areas where we can be below the median house price point, which is around $430,000 nationally. But if we can be below an area that has below the median house price point for, say, single family house, below median U.S. Unemployment, and higher than average median household income, I think that's a right recipe for just having positive cash flow and consistent rentals. We know that in a market like this, housing is a human necessity in the residential sector, and that's why we really think it's a good place to start and very predictable. But if you're in an area where you're below the median house price point, and let's say that interest rates have a dramatic increase in a short period of time, like we just experienced, and it's going to move your buyers from like $500,000 or $600,000 to $300,000 or $400,000, but they still could be buyers, or now they're renters. Either way, you just have still demand for retail sales as well as rental properties in kind of those middle B to upper B or A class areas that kind of meet that other criteria. So we've typically found Midwest and Southeast is some of the markets that we focus on heavily.
Gotcha. And do you see that changing over time, or like once you kind of identify one of those areas, you can stay there for a long period of time?
In the Midwest, I would say if we had to draw like just a general consensus, the Midwest is like your bread and butter predictable housing. They don't go through, you don't have huge ebbs and flows in price points. You also don't have crazy takeoff appreciation. It's not a cyclical market. So it's just a good old reliable, rental property that if you hold it for 20 or 30 years, you're going to have some appreciation and rental increases. And then we have some more markets that are a little bit more dynamic. And this would be more of like your growth markets in the Southeast where we're looking, where areas tend to fluctuate a little bit more. Well, if you look back at Florida, for example, Florida is one of these pretty cyclical markets, and you can't really look at Florida as a whole, because it's such a large state. There's a lot of sub-markets within the state, but there's a lot of ebbs and flows in those areas. So really looking at supply and demand is the big thing. There's so many people moving. Florida had over a 2% population growth last year, which was greater than any state. But construction is it's like the second slowest state for construction and permitting. So there's more people moving to the area than houses can be built. So that's a trend we want to, and inventory. It's like a 2-month inventory, which still means it's a seller's market in today's, even in today's market climate. So right now, that's an area we want to continue to be in. But as soon as that trend starts to change, which it probably will, at some point in time, then maybe we'll put the brakes on a little bit. So, I mean, it's always evolving.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we have about a dozen properties now in Florida. Love Florida. Are you guys seeing on the residential side the huge increases in insurance that we're experiencing on the commercial side? Is it pretty similar?
In some areas, yes. I mean, one flat out, we don't invest in flood zones at all, with the exception of we have a few coastal like short-term rentals. Those are just ones we personally own. But generally speaking, we try to be in areas that aren't in flood zones, and we have seen some increases. For example, to be specific, in the southwest Florida, we invest in Cape Coral quite a lot. We have over 1,000 projects currently in progress with ourselves and our investors in those areas in Southwest Florida and Cape Coral. Last year we had a Category 4 hurricane that just came through, literally came through Southwest Florida, through Cape Coral. Fortunately, we only had 2 properties that needed insurance claims, and that was just on the roof, and those happened to be my own personal properties. But no investors needed to make an insurance claim. However, we are starting to see, the average policy was the premium was $600 to $700 on those properties, and now it's probably doubled that. So they have increased. It's still cash flows because of the numbers, but it's certainly increased, and that is one thing to think about, in investing in areas like that.
Yeah, definitely. What about in terms of once someone purchases a property with you guys, a turnkey investment? What is your company's involvement with them after the fact look like? After it's closed as escrow and they have it and a tenant's in there, are you guys still involved down the road? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're not doing, at this point in time, we've completely outsourced management to third party. And so this is us finding, the right managerial teams, or actually building them from the ground up. So we do have some partnerships and some managerial teams, but mainly it's third party, finding the right team to work with, and then making sure that that team is adhering to our standards that we've seen to be successful in all these different areas within state legislation. But generally speaking, we're very involved with the investor, not on the direct property management, but making sure that the property manager is doing their job. And if there's issues, then we get involved, making sure that the investor is building a business plan and adding all the ancillary things that they need to, from having the right real estate, like we talked about, legal structure, potentially the right account set up, and all the ancillary things that they need to be successful, as well as, okay, what's next? We want our investors, we want to stay engaged with them, we want them to be successful so they come back and invest with us again. No one's here to buy just one investment property. So I would say we're very engaged with them, but more on the business strategy and scalability of their portfolio aspect.
Got it. And do most of your clients, do they end up buying several homes?
Yeah, the average investor, and this depends on each person, but across the board, the average person is buying 3 properties their first year. And I think that's just more accessible because we operate below the median house price point for the U.S. So, it just stretches your capital further. And the average investor continues to invest with us to own, I think, on average about 17 doors. We have some people that are over 50, and some people, based on their financial situation, that's just a slower progression. Maybe they're buying 1 per year. But most everyone comes back to diversify and scale their portfolio. Some continue to do on, and we have some investors that they only buy with us because they just want to be completely hands off. And then we have active investors that, hey, they're doing their own thing, and they may see an opportunity based on their goals where they like the, say, Texas or Southwest Florida investment opportunity, and they'll scoop up some new construction, and then we'll see them in a couple of years, whatever the case is. Yeah, but the goal is to make sure people are having a good experience so they continue to invest with us and, long term to reach their goals. Yeah,
I love it. All right. Shifting gears a little bit, what do you see in terms of the housing market or direction it's going, let's say in the next 12 months? I know you're in a bunch of different areas, but if you had to kind of take a look forward, where do you see things headed?
I'll look into my crystal ball and give everyone a glimpse. I think that there's a lot of different, it really, in this type of discussion in today's market, it is really geographically dependent, both within what market you're talking about, but also what asset class. We've obviously seen, over the past 12 months, we've just experienced the most dramatic interest rate increase in the shortest period of time that we've ever seen. Now, interest rates are still, I think, reasonable if you look back at a full history of where interest rates are at. So some people, that came in thinking that maybe they sat on the sidelines, or, we always hear critics and all the noise in the news. A lot of people expected a housing market crash. However, simple supply and demand, at least in most of the markets that we're operating in, there was still more demand than there was supply. So yes, it was maybe not such a crazy seller's market over the past 12 months, which is a good thing, I think, because that trend just couldn't continue forever coming out of historically low interest rates. So we've seen some things slow down, and I think we're kind of at the pinnacle now. Actually, personally, and with our investors, we've seen since about Q2, the start of Q2 this year, we've seen investor activity increase quite a bit, and I think that's because people got over the fear of where rates are at, and they just realized that hey, we can still invest, which you should be, and make the numbers work. Interest rates are just a variable at a point in time. So I think that we'll have a little bit more of a normal market cycle going into the next 1 to 2 years, Chad, where we'll have a little bit more buying opportunity. I certainly don't think we're headed for this huge correction or anything like that. I think it's just a little bit more of a more even playing field for investments, which again is a good thing. But we still have some markets where we're seeing double-digit appreciation and rental increases year after year, and that's just, again, supply and demand. So I think if you're in those type of areas, our focus is mainly below median house price point, residential properties, 1 to 4 units, in areas where you have affordability and you have population growth. And I think that's kind of the safe place to be right now.
Yeah, I agree. We're invested in 5 different states, and having population growth as a tailwind is huge, right? And we're seeing the same thing. There's still inventory issues, at least in the single family space, and we're not in there, but it does affect us. But a lot of people aren't getting out of their 3% mortgages, right? I've heard it referred to as golden handcuffs to the house you're in. So I know for me and my house, we're at 2.75%, and it's going to have to be something pretty persuasive to get us to move, right?
That's free money right now with where we're at inflation wise, right? Don't sell that thing.
It's you can't. And there's a lot of people that are in that position, right? I think it's 60% of single family mortgages are below 4% right now. So I don't see that shifting a lot. And then obviously that's a direct impact for you, but also for us on the multifamily side, because it's tough for homeowners to buy homes, right? Because the price is staying high because there's low inventory on the market. And that's keeping pricing pretty high, and that creates renters for us, renters for you too, actually. So we see it as definitely market dependent. But we're optimistic, and we're still very active in buying. So yeah, I was just curious on your take on it.
I mean, we work with a lot of individual and large scale investors, and what we've generally seen, and with our own investing, is that the more experienced, savvy investors, they're not slowing down, right? They're still, if anything, this is a little bit better of a buying opportunity that we've been seeing over the past 5+ years. Yeah. But they're very active, and they know how to invest and make money in any market cycle. But the people that are sitting on the sidelines are not taking action are the ones that maybe are a little bit more skittish. Maybe the newer investor that is emotionally influenced. I would say at least that's what we've seen. But I mean, we're still ramping up. A lot of what we personally buy is influenced based on a tax play, and so that's another thing to throw into the mix here as well, and into the inventory discussion, is from an investment standpoint, tax advantages specifically with cost segregation is still very attractive this year, even at 80%. So we still see people going through 1031 exchanges, using those and making deals happen. So
yeah. Do you guys do cost segregation studies on each of your houses?
Personally, every single one. Yeah. I mean, our goal is to buy enough real estate to offset our complete taxable income and create a loss every single year. Yeah. And we've successfully done that. And that's a big portion of why we're investing in commercial, actually, because we can just acquire much larger projects more easily than trying to scoop up, hundreds and hundreds of doors. And then we do have some investors that run accelerated depreciation if they meet the criteria for RE Pro on their individual properties as well.
Yeah.
But we do on every single property.
Yeah. Got it. All right.
That works.
Last question as we kind of wrap it up. What's your advice or recommendation for somebody who's looking to get into real estate? They're kind of like the investor, the beginner type person that you referred to earlier. What's your suggestion on how they should look into getting into the market, into real estate?
The first thing you should do is certainly decide on what your buying criteria is, and also what level of involvement, what type of investor are you? Are you someone who is someone who really doesn't want to own real estate and is better off just participating in a syndication where you can get a piece of a larger project and not have to think about it, right? That's about as passive as it gets. Or are you someone that wants to be a little bit more involved and either own your own real estate, maybe self-manage, or just own real estate to be able to use things like leverage and grow your own personal portfolio to have a little bit more control? I think it depends on what your criteria is. So being very honest with yourself and determining that, but then taking action. I mean, so many people sit on the sidelines, I think, for so many years, and they think they're taking action because they're listening to podcasts and they're reading, and that's good, but it's second to firsthand experience. And you got to get in the game. Don't let this market cycle or concern turn the news off, because there's always something. I mean, I remember 2 years ago, or I guess 2.5, whatever, or 3 years ago we're at now, and it's like people were concerned about COVID, right? And I had so many people tell me, do not buy retail in COVID, which, I mean, I guess rightfully so for a lot of reasons, but ours did completely fine. And we made exceptional opportunity created in COVID. And then look at what happened to the real estate market 2 or 3 years. So my point is that there's always going to be something in the news. Put that aside and get involved. However, take action, but you got to get in the game. We interview a lot of very successful people, and the kind of common consensus when we ask them, well, what could they go back and do differently? It's either they would have started sooner or been more aggressive earlier on, because you don't know what the future holds, but you got to get started. So that would be my advice: is just get in there and take action.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like they say, the two best times to get into real estate are 20 years ago and today. And I think if we looked at, let's say in 5 or 10 years, look back and say, oh, wow, I got into real estate in 2023. It really doesn't matter if you have a longer time horizon. And this is investments that people are looking for, like, oh, I need to save up money for, my daughter's wedding or for college or something. I need money in 4 years. Like, real estate's probably not the best place for something like that. But if you have a long time horizon with your money, and you combine that with leverage, like we talked about, the tax depreciation, 1031 exchanges, which are huge benefits that the government gives us to incentivize us in real estate, you make money over time. So I agree. So I think that's really great advice. Take action, get educated, figure out what asset class you want to be in, and move forward. So I agree. So, thanks for that, Zach. So if people want to learn more about rent to retirement or get in touch with you, learn more, what are the best ways?
I think just going to our website. So it's renttoretirement.com, renttoretirement.com. We put a lot of information out there in our podcast and our YouTube channel about all things real estate, not just turnkey investing. We have a lot of market information out there. We bring on a lot of high-level guests such as yourself to talk about different investing opportunities. So I think just going to our website, renttoretirement.com, you can learn a lot about what we do. You can learn from our different stuff that we put out there. And then our 800 number is 1-800-311-6781. If you're just listening to this, first thing we want to do is just jump on a consultation with you to learn about your goals and criteria, answer your questions, and see how we can add value to assist you in accomplishing your goals.
Cool. Thank you for that. One last question I just thought of. So since these are people taking their own investments, they're not registered with the SEC or 506B or C type offerings, right? They're just their own investments. Right.
Yep. This isn't a security. You don't have to be an accredited investor to purchase these. You are physically buying your own real estate. You know what I mean? Cool. And so you're 100% the owner of your own physical real estate, and you have 100% control over that.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so that's a big plus. You don't have to be an accredited investor to do these types of investments. That's a big plus, or sophisticated for that matter. It's your own thing. So, all right. Well, great, Zach. I really appreciate it. It's been great learning more about you and your company. Congratulations on all your success.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Chad. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Talk soon. Bye. All right, there you have it. Another way to get into real estate. You can invest in your own properties as a turnkey investment through rent to retirement. If you want to learn more about them, check out their website. And also, don't forget to drop us a comment below and subscribe to our channel for new content. Thanks a lot.